What's up and welcome back to another live stream with GizmoSlipTech. Today we are going to be doing optimization, full optimization guide for the Razer Blade 14. So here's the laptop right before me. We're going to do initial testing here with Cinebench R23 and TimeSpy. Then we're going to set the laptop up on a laptop cooler. We're going to go through all the little steps you need to know about how to undervolt the Ryzen 9 7940HS. To do that, we're going to download and install the UxTU utility. Then we're going to do undervolt testing with Cinebench R23 to see how much we improved. And then we're going to go download MSI Afterburner and we're going to set that up. I'm going to show you how to set that up. And then we're going to go into undervolting the RTX 4070 for either best thermals or overclocking it for best performance. And then we're going to do some TimeSpy testing to see what the results look like. And then we're going to try to get through a bunch of games and do some side-by-side benchmarks with my initial benchmarking run with this laptop to see, do we get any performance gains in some of the games? I imagine some of the games we're going to see some nice gains. Some of the games we might not see any almost. We'll have to see. All right. What's up, everybody? I see everyone's hopping in the chat. What's up, Darren? Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's go ahead and do our pre-test. So this is going to be like as if you just got the Blade 14. It's unoptimized. We are going to be in balanced mode here in Synapse. Like this is like a user who just doesn't know anything about how to make the laptop as powerful as possible. We're going to go to Cinebench R23 and we'll start with that. All right. Process lasso is enabled just to keep that part of the test fair. But here we go. So, and we're going to pull up HW info to see what this laptop does here. Big Jizzy says, stop trying to make me spend more money on Razer. Yeah, to each their own. That's pretty much all I could say. I mean, obviously, this is far from the best bang for the buck laptop. You definitely have to have some extra money laying around to splurge on a Razer product for sure. That said, a lot of this optimization guide is going to be very applicable to other laptops out there as long as it has the same specs. Either you have a 4070 or the Ryzen 9 7940HS. So, okay, so this is going to be our initial run. We'll see what our temps. We're going to focus on three things really: our clock speeds, our temperatures, and then our power limits as well. So those are kind of like our big focuses. And then our actual Cinebench R23 score here is also very important. So notice that right now we're only doing 4.1 gigahertz in Cinebench R23 out of the box. We're only pulling 41.8 watts. So this is what a brand new user would encounter if they just unboxed their Blade 14. And this is the speed, roughly, what it would do. All right. Our temps are pretty good, though, because the laptop's basically running at half power right now. And there's almost no fan noise at all, which is really great. So considering there's no fan noise, I'm pretty sure we're going to get a pretty good score all around for an initial run here. Let's see what we get. 14,656. We'll do one more just to make sure that we're doing this at a good rate. Or I mean, Jesus, stop. AMD just keeps popping up these notifications for no reason. Okay, so yeah, 41 watts of power. By the way, we are flat on the desk right now for our laptop. Okay, so 4.01 for our gigahertz on our core clock. And what we'll do is we'll do 5 total runs, and then we'll do our measurements during the 5th run to see what we get overall. Been waiting for this video. Let's go. That's right. Mustafa said he made me buy the Blade 18, man. LOL. Or 14,459. All right, so that's about the same score. We're not really changing score much. Right now, we're not really focusing on the score. We'll do the score on the last one. But I'm going to open up sticky notes as well so we can get an idea, write down our numbers, and compare. Kowalski says, is Alienware X14 worth the money? I have not reviewed the X14. So, and it's just going to depend. I would probably mainly focus on buying that one on sale if it's on sale. That would probably be my initial thing. Am I using PBO optimizer to undervolt? I'm going to use UxTU to undervolt the CPU. Okay, so 14,525. That's our third run. And let's take a look at our clock speeds again. So initially, right out the gate, it's like doing 54 watts, but only for like a very short period of time. And then we're dropping down to 4.05, we're going to call it. So 4.05 gigahertz, all core. Well, they're always going to be all cores. And then it's only doing 41.7 watts of power. 72.2 C. So 72 degrees Celsius. All right. And our score so far is about 14,500. And our fourth run, 14,265. Well, we were also opening the notes here, the sticky notes. So I guess it's understandable. All right. So so last run before we make some changes to the system profile and to go through our optimization run. So the only thing that's really good about the initial balanced mode is the temperatures are great and the fan noise is very minimal, considering the amount of performance that we're seeing in the system. So the fact that we can do over 4 gigahertz on only 41.8 watts and our temps are only 71 degrees, that's all great and a very quiet system. So initially, that's kind of the initial impressions. The performance really is not that amazing, 14,300. So I don't know, if we were to average all of those runs together, we're probably doing around 14,000, say 400. All right. And then if you wanted to do like just a quick example of increasing the power, you can go to custom and we can go to boost on the CPU and do max fan mode as well. Those two things, these changes right here are just going to automatically raise the power limits of the CPU to be more powerful. And it's the easiest way for a user to increase performance on the Blade 14 from a CPU perspective, changing the CPU to boost mode. Now when we run it, let's see what our performance looks like. All right, so now as our baseline performance, we're starting at 4.9 gigahertz, but some of the cores are already starting to drop down to 4.7, 4.8 right here. I want to make sure you guys can see that. But yeah, 4.76 right now. Halfway through the initial run here, it's already dropping to 4.76. We've hit 95-degree thermal throttling, all right? So we are thermal throttling now. Our max fans are kicking on, but now we're down to 4.69 on most of the cores, 4.75 on some of the cores, 4.74. We got 16,532. Let's run it again. So we're already thermal throttling immediately at the start. 98 degrees, 99 degrees, 82 watts of power, 4.76 gigahertz. All right. So this is like the max fan boost mode, basically like the max speed we would naturally see on a consistent basis, right around this level of performance. 4.7, I'm going to say 4.75 gigahertz. And we're just going to go 95 degrees because we're just thermal throttling nonstop. And we're doing 79 watts of power right now. Though the wattage may go up or down a little bit. All right. So we're going to count this as our performance level. So 482. We have 4.75 gigahertz and 95 degrees Celsius at 79.1 watts. So we're writing down these so we get a better idea of how much performance we've managed to optimize on the laptop. So just by making these changes, we've managed to improve performance by about 2,100 points in Cinebench R23 so far. See here, if I can make this, I can bold it. I don't know if that's gonna make it a little easier to read or not. But that's already some nice performance gains, though our temperatures are higher now, and the fan noise is also quite loud. So now let's go ahead and talk about where you would download the UxTU application. And so again, if you're just hopping in the live stream, we're going to go through all of these different topics today. So we're doing our pre-test on Cinebench R23 and TimeSpy. Let's go ahead and do a pre-test in balanced mode here. All right, for TimeSpy. So TimeSpy is a synthetic benchmarking application that measures how powerful both your CPU and your GPU is from a raw rendering perspective. Doesn't mean that it perfectly represents every game out there, but it will represent many of the games quite well. Primarily GPU-bound games or CPU-bound games. So yeah. The real Bilal says, do you think the G14 4060 would perform worse than the G16 4060? Probably not. There should be in a similar ballpark of performance because the 4060s should be basically maxing performance in the G14 or the G16. Could you also do a battery test run, please? I did a battery test run during my initial unboxing review, but that's not going to be the focus of today's video. I don't want to overcomplicate the optimization process with too many numbers. So TimeSpy here, shabam. We're going to go ahead and run this. I'm going to make sure Afterburner is turned on. It should be already turned on, but just make sure. Oh, and Afterburner needs to be reset. There we go. Okay. All right. Cool. So Afterburner, no overclock on the RTX 4070. All right. And inside of here, we're in balanced mode. This is going to be our baseline non-optimized run for TimeSpy. What's up, Murtax? 4060 can only pull around 100 watts due to voltage limit. Yeah, and sometimes it can pull a little bit more than that in like a burst up to like 120 or something, but usually it's only doing like 95 to 100 in most games. So yeah, going for a Zephyr's G14, G16, or a Strix G16, all of those in the 4060, at least from a GPU perspective, will be in the same ballpark of performance, very close, maybe slightly different. Gian Marco says, getting similar results on the Flow X16 at 65 watts. This AMD chip really seems out of its comfort zone at higher wattages. Yeah, it only can get slightly faster when you go to the higher and higher wattage, Giancarlo. You probably don't have as many things running in the background, Gianmarco. That's probably part of it. So, all right, so let's take a look at our defaults, okay? So this is balance mode. We're getting 2265 GPU clock, 99 watts of power, 100 watts of power. Our GPU temp is hovering around 69 degrees right now. This is during the initial intro into TimeSpy. We'll see what like near the end. Again, this is the baseline time spy run, balanced mode, not max fans, no overclock, no undervolt, nothing going on here right now. And honestly, the performance is pretty good. Even out of the box, the performance is pretty good. We're getting nice steady GPU clock at 2265. Also notice our voltage was at 0.925. So naturally, the NVIDIA GPU with the curve, it's hitting the 0.925 voltage node, which gives us 2265 on our GPU clock. Or is it 2260 or 65? I think it's 65. Anyway, the whole idea here is when we're doing these benchmarks, we want to raise if we want to go for maximum performance, we're going to want to raise our boost clock here and keep the same 0.925 voltage. That's if we want maximum performance. Now, if we want best thermals, then we're going to want to lower our voltage and lock our voltage in MSI Afterburner and increase our clock speed, or maybe try to just get back to this 2265 that you would be at ordinarily. So, or you can even go a little lower if you really want the best possible thermals and super quiet fans. So you could go like, oh, I'll just go with 2000 megahertz for like quiet mode or whatever. So you can choose how you want to tune it. So notice that we're getting up to 74 degrees right now, 73. 65 degrees on the CPU there. And things are heating up a little bit. If we were to run this in a loop, we would see temperatures probably continue to rise for at least a little while. So notice that we also went down in our clock speed down to 2250. So it's hovering right around 2250 to 2265. And the voltage is not perfect at 0.925. But it seems to hit that the majority of the time. So this is the CPU test now for Time Spy, and we're doing 4.4 gigahertz, 74 degrees, only 42 watts. So, and we went down to 4.1 gigahertz towards the end there. So about the same what we were getting in Cinebench R23 for balanced mode, capping out around 41 watts on that CPU. So this is our baseline Time Spy. All right, so let's just take some notes here. All right, so for Time Spy, we got 11,702 for our combined. All right, and then we got 11,874 for our GPU. And 10,819 for our CPU. All right. So this is in balanced auto fans. Also, our temps, we got up to 74 degrees on the GPU. C for GPU, and we got it was about 67, 60, R65 probably on the CPU, something like that. Just in our ordinary, before the CPU test started, CPU pulled 42 watts approximately. I'm just gonna say put 42 in CPU test. Okay, so these are our notes that we're keeping in mind for our initial test here. These are our baselines for what we're going to try to improve on. So 14,400 for our Cinebench R23. We improved on it already with some basic software optimization, getting us up to 16,482. And we pushed that over 17,000 just barely when we were doing the runs over and over and over again on a raised rear of the laptop. So that's another way we slightly improved it during our unboxing review. And so initially here, the big thing here is that we are thermal throttling at 95 degrees Celsius, which means that the laptop theoretically could maybe pull higher wattage and clock speed. Also notice that our CPU all core is at 4.75 approximately, And we're going to see if we can push that up closer to, say, 5 gigahertz with our Undervolt Overclock using UxTU. And I'm not sure what we can pull for our wattage in a sustained like multi Cinebench R23 run, but it'll be fun to find out, especially with the laptop cooler and max fans enabled on the Blade 14 as well. So, and our time spy, we're not breaking 12,000. We're at 11,874 for our GPU score, CPU 10,800. So overall, these are good baselines, especially for a freaking tiny little 14-inch laptop. It's phenomenal, like really, really good. It's obviously very expensive for the money still, being a Razer product, but these numbers are good. A good baseline to give us something that we can improve on. So our next step is going to be talking about UxTU and how to undervolt the Ryzen 9 7940HS. So I've got the website pulled up here. Let me go ahead and show you. So, okay. So AMD APU tuning utility. This is the old name for it, but it still has the links on here. So you go to this, you scroll down, you click release page on GitHub. There's links to both of these pages in the video description down below. Here is the UxTU version that we're doing, v2.00. And it's not perfect. Even our version is not perfect, but it is working to undervolt the CPU. Now, there is a bug. Every time you apply a new undervolt, the UxTU is crashing. So you can see that the developer on here is working hard to try to improve things. They're doing lots of different versions so far this year. But yeah, I would anticipate that more optimizations and improvements will be made, and hopefully we'll see less crashing or any bugginess and more features added. They have a lot of features on this little application. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, so what you do is you click this Windows download button, and that's going to pop up a window for downloading UxTU. Now, once you get UxTU installed, it's going to ask you to do a Windows, there's going to be a Windows file that needs to be downloaded. So this Windows file is like a runtime package that basically helps interface the UxTU to the system. And that needs to be installed first, and it makes sure that I mean, for me, it was no problem. It went straight to Microsoft's website, downloaded it, installed it in like less than a minute. But you do have to approve that like Windows can use this file. So, and I've not had any problems using it so far, but obviously use UxTU at your own risk. This is your choice to do it. As far as I know, it's fine, but that's the best all I can do is give you the best information that I got. So each of us has to take our own risks with our own laptops. That said, UxTU, once you get this thing installed, it basically, all you got to do is run it. You basically extract it, and then you run the application. And then what I do, I think you actually do a little installer, and then it puts Universal x86 tuning utility, a little application here in the start menu. You can just start, I found it just by typing in Universal, and then by the time I was halfway through typing in Universal, it came right up. I just clicked on this. All right. And up it comes. All right. So there it is. And then once it's open, I right-clicked. All right. I right-clicked on the start bar menu here, and I just hit pin to taskbar. And what this does is it makes it so it's easy to reopen if it crashes or you have any issues, you need to pull it back up, whatever. Once you have it open, it should, in theory, also be available in your little menu down here. Like if I were to minimize this, it doesn't show on the start menu or start bar here. It actually just goes into being a task in this little pop-up window down here. So you just click on this and it comes right back up again. As long as it hasn't crashed. If it's crashed, it's not going to be down there. And you'll have to reopen it up again using the little button down here. Anyway, so I have not messed around with all the different settings in here. There are a lot of them. But what I've touched so far in here in my optimization of the CPU is just going down to the custom mode here. Then you scroll down and you do AMD Curve Optimizer. Now what this is going to do is it's a lot like the It's a lot like this curve in MSI Afterburner. It just basically makes it so that the CPU running at the same voltage goes to a higher clock speed. It like raises the clock speed higher for the target at that same voltage level. So essentially you're overclocking the system. And if you're, like if we use UxTU and then we put it in the laptop in balanced mode, it will still hit a higher clock speed no matter what mode you're in. It's just a matter of across the whole wattage range, the target clock speed for that level of electricity is higher. So you're basically getting more efficiency and performance out of the machine at the same voltage level. That's essentially what the curve optimizer does. All right, so what you do in this all-core offset, you just click the little check button here, and then you press the down, and the maximum you can set it to is 50. I have heard that going beyond -25 can crash your system. I have not tried going beyond -23. I did run into a little instability. This, of course, is going to vary from laptop to laptop, CPU to CPU. Certain CPUs are going to be able to overclock more than others, depending on the silicon lottery that you got with your laptop. So we're going to do -22, which was the highest I successfully undervolted without any issues so far. I did do like 7 or 8 tests at different little offsets here, starting at 15, bringing it up, and then running into a little instability at -23. I brought it back down to -22, and we'll see if we run into any instability during our testing today. If we do, we know to go down to -21. That's essentially how I do this. And then when you click this little checkbox right here, apply current setting, it's going to take this offset and apply it to the AMD CPU. And there it did the application, but the application is no longer open. As you can see, there's no little bar down here anymore, or no little UxTU window. So it appears to have closed. So let's go ahead and see if our performance improved. And let's go ahead and also go back to custom mode, max fan, right? So we're going to do this for our test here. All right, and then we are going to go into, let me zoom out so you can see what we're doing here. All right. So then we're going to go ahead and put the laptop on the IETS GT500 laptop cooler. All right, so this guy fits right in here, but you do have to make sure that you use the inside insert here. It's designed for smaller laptops. You can take this out for bigger laptops, but you want that insert in for this size of a laptop. And the Blade 14 fits right here on the GT500 perfectly with a seal all the way around. All right. So there's that guy. Now we're going to go ahead and turn on the GT500 now, which has this, it has the controls over here on the left side. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that sucker on, and I'm going to make sure the fan's up to max. Fans are going to be at max. All right, so we're going to have some loud fans. All right, and I'll go ahead and just, I don't want to prop everything up, but I'm just going to make sure there's some additional airflow underneath the cooler. And there we go. All right, so we have the laptop cooler running now. We have Synapse in max mode. We have Synapse in max performance mode. And we now have undervolted the UxTU application. All right, using the UxTU application. Let's go ahead and pop over into Cinebench R23. There we go. All right. How much for this laptop? This laptop was $26.99. And this is a review unit sent over by Razer. I'm sending it back to them in a couple days. Probably after this live stream, actually. This is the goal, to get this live stream done and then send it back to them. So we've got HW info open here now. All right. Look at our idle temps. $35 degrees for our idle temps. Those are very low. Let's go ahead and run. All right, let's go ahead and run. So starting out, we're doing 5.1 on one of the cores, 5.4. Some of the cores are doing 4.7. Okay, now they're all doing over 5. Our temp right now is 85 degrees on the CPU. CPU package power doing 79.8. So we are no longer hitting thermal throttling immediately, which is great. We'll see if we eventually hit it after 5 runs. And look at our core clock. It's still above 5, or right at 4.99. A lot of the cores above 5. 16,829. So not too much of an improvement there. Hopefully we can, like, I have been able to get over 18,000 previously, so I'm hoping that we can get some additional improvement here. So again, over 80 watts of power, 78.6 watts now. Our core clock, again, hanging out right at 5 gigahertz across all of the cores, which is really great. Our CPU is still not thermal throttling, even though this is our second run now. And we were definitely thermal throttling by this point last time. 17,111. So we broke the 17,000 mark now. Again, still over 5 gigahertz. 88 degrees. You know, it's interesting, our wattage here, we're actually pulling a little bit less watts than what we were pulling before. Isn't that interesting? Maybe it's because we're undervolted now and we're hitting the max core clock and it doesn't need to pull the additional wattage. I'm not sure. That's really interesting. So let's try and let it run. We'll do so this is the third run. We'll do an entire fourth run, just looking at the window and seeing if that improves any performance. 17,173. I'm gonna check chat for a moment. Is Razer better than the Asus ROG 4070 version? And what about the Asus TUF A15 4070 version? I am not sure about the Asus TUF A15 4070. I've not reviewed it. For me, it's all about price to performance and value that you get out of the machine for the money. So we'll have to... obviously, this Razer Blade 14 is very expensive for the money. And you got to have a... Basically, whoever buys the Blade 14 basically says, I want to get a 4070. That's all I need in terms of power. 17,893 that time. All right, 17,893. And I think during our initial testing runs, we also could have had a little bit higher performance if we had kept the window on the time spy or on the Cinebench window the whole time, because it gets a little bit more performance when you actually are focusing on the Cinebench R23 window. So keep that in mind. Irfan asks, what do you think about the Legion Slim 5? I'm not sure yet. I have not reviewed that one yet. But that's one of the ones that's kind of on my list to review, the Slim series this year. It certainly seems promising, especially if you can get it on sale. 17,603. So let's do it one more run and let's get our vitals here. All right, so our vitals. We're doing 5 point. It's hard to say. I'm going to say 0 gigahertz. Let me move this up. Minus 23 undervolt. 5.05 gigahertz. We got 17,000. Our best run was 17,800, but I'm guessing it's going to be more like 17,600. I don't know. If we're focused on the window the whole time, I'm pretty sure we could pull that. We're actually only doing 70. If you look at our wattage pull is super interesting because it's only doing 77 watts, and we're getting more performance with less wattage. Well, now it's doing 79. It's hard to say. It keeps jumping between 77 and 70 and 80 watts basically. But our temps are much better as well at only 88 degrees Celsius. So overall, we saw a drop in temps of 7 degrees. We saw an increase in clock speed by about 0.25 gigahertz. And then, so 250 megahertz. And then our Cinebench R23 score went up about 1100. So that's a phenomenal gain overall using UxTU. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. Let's continue. So overall, this is obviously some pretty massive gains in terms of Cinebench R23 scores. I did some other tests where I'm focused completely on the window, and you can see some of the runs here that I got with no, with a minus 23 undervolt. We got 18,101 for my best run. So that was, you know, again, looking just at Cinebench R23 window, letting it run, and then coming back to it. So that's very impressive overall performance for this laptop. I mean, that's, especially when you factor in if you did an unoptimized run of 14,400, and then you compare that to the fully optimized run of 18,100, or we got our best run was like 17,900 or something. At least comparing those two settings, you're basically doing 14,400 minus 18,000. Well, let's do 17,900. That's 3,500 increase. So 3,500 increase. That's a 24% gain in performance by optimizing our settings. 24.3% increase to Cinebench R23 score. Now, that's a huge amount of performance gain. Obviously not as big comparing max fan mode, boost mode, all of that to max fan mode. Now, this, you know, this right here, this 16,482, this is achievable without hardly any additional things, just changing a few settings in Synapse. And then pushing UxTU and a laptop cooler, 482. You know, we did break 17,000 before previously too, so in our initial unboxing run. But it's basically like, let's say it's about 1,000 point gain on 17,000. So, because that's really what I think the gain is. So 5.8%, or about 6% overall, 5.9, 6% basically for our undervolting gains when comparing like to like, max fan mode to max fan mode. 24% gains comparing max fan mode with undervolting with a laptop cooler versus completely unoptimized. So pretty interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and move into MSI Afterburner overview and setup procedures. Okay, so next MSI Afterburner, this is a utility that you can use to monitor, overclock your GPU. When you download MSI Afterburner, just click this download button. It'll pop up with a little window. You download that thing, you install it, and it's going to install 2 applications. It's going to install MSI Afterburner, and it's going to install Riva Tuner, which is the overlay tool. Okay, so let's take a look at what that looks like inside of Windows here. All right, so to open Afterburner, I just type in AFT, and there's the Afterburner right there. Now, I made my Afterburner window bigger because I wanted you guys to be able to see it easier, right? So if you want to be able to make your window size bigger, you can go into your settings in here, go to user interface, and you can make it bigger. You can make it bigger and smaller, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right. Now, the Riva Tuner, when you open Afterburner, it'll open up right here, Riva Statistics Tuner. It's this little blue icon with like a dot, like a monitor. It's like a little monitor icon. You click that, and you'll get this window to pop up. Now, initially, the first settings I change, I enable Start with Windows, and I have Show On-Screen Display set to on, though you can turn that on and off. If you don't need to see the Windows numbers or the overlay numbers, like you're happy with the performance, you can turn that off, and then you want to turn it back on if you want the numbers to pop back up again. If you hit Start with Windows, you'll also want to click this button on MSI Afterburner to have it start with Windows as well. That way, both applications will start up and you'll actually get data. This overlay tool can pull data from different utilities like Afterburner or HW Info. So HW Info in here, we can actually right click in here and click RTSS. That's the Riva Tuner Statistics Server. And this will allow us to add this value into the display overlay, which we had to actually do because we were missing some data. So if you're missing data, then you'll want to enable certain settings. Now, one setting that Afterburner basically never has in it that you'll definitely want to enable in HW Info is going down to the NVIDIA GPU core voltage. All right, so this one, GPU core voltage, you'll want to right click that and then turn on RSS on this guy. All right, so show value in OSD. Okay, so let's talk configuration a little bit more about the Riva Statistics Tuner. You want to do raster 3D plus. I set mine to 14, but that makes it big enough for the camera to pick it up. You can probably set this, keep it at the default, or make it down to like 8 or something small. If things are super big, super small on your screen, these numbers scale up and down with the Windows DPI scaling. So if you're using Windows DPI scaling and you set that to 200%, you will not need to set this to be as big. Otherwise, like you set it to 14 with 200% scaling, it's going to be like huge letters. Okay. The other thing I do is I set mine to 600 width. This basically moves the overlay into the middle of my screen so that it starts not in the corner, which is better for videos. You don't have to do that. If you want your overlay to stay in the corner, that's just fine. Okay? But those are the core settings that you need to keep in mind. You shouldn't need to fiddle with anything else in Riva Statistics Tuner. You want to make sure you click the little minimize button and not the X button. Otherwise, you'll close it and you won't get any overlay. All right, so let's talk Afterburner setup. You click this is the default overlay. You can change the window overlay here. This can be changed out for different skins. But you'll want to leave the default skin, at least I do usually, but there are sometimes functionality differences with different overlays, so keep that in mind. You like literally may lose functionality if you switch to a different skin. It just depends on the skin. Now, typically with laptops, I don't recommend unlocking the voltage and power limits beyond whatever the manufacturers set. Sometimes you can flash the VBIOS or install alternate drivers, or sometimes they're just unlocked. But generally speaking, I would say just leave whatever power limits and core voltages the same, and only edit these things in the curve editor. Now the core clock, this guy right here, you can easily bump this up and down for a quick and easy overclock. All right, so if you want something that's super minimal effort and you don't want to have to tune it or mess with it, it's not going to necessarily be the best overclock, but you can just put in like 150 here and like, I don't know, 300 for your memory. And this is probably going to work on almost every RTX 4070 without crashing. But it's going to depend on which GPU you have and all that. All right, so this is probably going to work on most RTX 4070s, no problem. You might have to go down a little bit if you crash with this value. I would take this down to 125. But most likely, I think most RTX 4070s will even be able to go to over 200 plus on their core clock without crashing. At least all the ones I have tested have been able to do that. So, okay. Cool. All right. Here we go. All right. So, advanced settings. All right. For your monitoring settings, you're going to need to go to the settings button over here. Go click on the settings button. Then you're going to go to monitoring up here. All right. And you'll want to grab your GPU. You'll want to figure out which GPU you need to enable for the on-screen display, the OSD. And for this laptop, it actually comes up as GPU 2. And I know that it's GPU 2 because it shows all of these limits on the NVIDIA GPU. The AMD GPU will not have all 4 of these. So that's one way you can easily tell that it's the NVIDIA GPU that you need to turn on for the on-screen display. It might be GPU 1, it might be GPU 2, depending on your laptop. All right. Now, GPU 1 in here is the AMD RX 780M, which is the integrated GPU for the Ryzen chip. We don't want to run that information at all. It would just confuse our overlay. So we want to only run GPU number 2 in OSD. All right, so you'll need to enable this, you need the check mark checked if you're on the left, and you'll need to check mark this button down here, show an on-screen display. Those are the things that you need to make sure are checked if you're going to do this visual overlay, okay? So let's go ahead and move down the list. We've got GPU memory usage, GPU 2 core clock, GPU 2 memory clock, GPU 2 power, GPU 2 temp limit, power limit, voltage, and no load limit. Temp limit means we're hitting our max temps and our performance is being limited. Power limit means we're hitting the maximum total wattage that can go through the system. Voltage limit means we're hitting the voltage curve node, the highest node that the VBIOS is allowing us to hit, which is our ideal in the max performance mode. If you're being voltage limited, that means you're getting maximum possible performance out of, at least on the highest node that you can be on. No load limit, and power limit can also be an artificial limit. So it might be like in balanced mode maybe, or silent mode, maybe we're being power limited down to like 40, 50, 60 watts of power or something. And it'll say power limit, because that can be like an artificial limiter that takes us below. And that would also lower our voltage limit too. But anyway, no load limit means that we are not GPU bound. The GPU does not have a full load on the GPU. So that means that we're likely being CPU bound, memory bound. Maybe we have a total FPS cap on our display of 120 hertz refresh rate, 120 FPS, and the GPU might be able to do 200 FPS, so it's not hitting a load limit. All right, so we have, in addition, we have CPU usage, RAM usage, and then we also have frame rate, frame time, frame rate average, and 1% low. Now, when you click on frame time, I have it set to have a little graph that goes like a little bloop bloop. To do that, you simply go in here and you change this to graph instead of text. If you have it set to text, it'll just be a number. If you have it set to graph, it'll be the little line, okay? So that's all of the settings I have turned on inside of MSI Afterburner for my OSD settings. And for my HW info, I had to turn on a couple things that were missing on the CPU. So I believed it's core clock. Core clock was missing, so I had to turn that on. All right. And then our package power, I believe, was missing. I had to turn that on. And I'm not sure about temps. I might have had it. Yeah, I had to turn on temperature as well. Usually those things are included in Afterburner on most laptops, but in this laptop they were not. And then, of course, I also in HW info, I also got GPU core voltage. I also turned that on so I can see my values. So what's the benefit of doing all of these overlays? All right. It's so that we can see all of our overclocking data live as we do the overclocking. And to ensure stability, to ensure that we're hitting the right clock speeds that we're supposed to be hitting, all of that, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and reset everything back to stock. Let's go ahead and get 3D Mark Time Spy opened up. All right. While that's opening, let me go ahead and check chat. I've been on a roll, so I wanted to make sure I got through all that. Yash J says, please do a Lenovo 7i tweaking Undervolt video. I plan to. I've got it over there. I just had to do this one. I've had a lot of priorities mixed up right now, so just trying. There's been no coil wine on this one, Amateur. Lex asks, hey Gizmo, you've been using the Blade 18. How's the long-term usage been for you? I have mine on the way. The only issue I've had with mine is flickering when in dual dynamic display mode, where it can switch between integrated and dedicated GPU. The only way I've been able to get the flickering to go away on my Blade 18 is by being in dedicated NVIDIA GPU only mode, which means I don't get good battery life. But that's the only real complaint I have with it. I've had no other issues with the laptop. And Razer has not been able to duplicate my issue with their Blade 18s that they have on hand. So they might have me ship my Blade 18 to them for them to do testing. Maybe it was part of their early units, or maybe there's something going on that they don't. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so next you're going to want to download 3D Mark Time Spy. You can get this straight through Steam. It costs a little bit of money, not too much. And I would recommend it. It's worth it if you want to tune your laptop on a regular basis or make sure that your laptop's running at the right level. You can also, I believe, download it for free and run it once from 3D Mark's website directly. But you don't get advanced options like doing what we're going to do here. So we're going to do graphics test number 2. We're going to do it in windowed mode, and we're going to do it with looping enabled. If we don't have windowed mode check, we won't be able to Alt-Tab in and out of Afterburner to make our changes. And if we don't have looping enabled, it will just run once and stop. So we got to make sure those are set up and turned on. And now we're going to go ahead and hit Run Custom. Beholder, are you not able to actually run your laptop anymore? That sucks, man. I'm not sure what the best thing for you to do is. It's just going to depend. Yeah, Lex, I'm still very happy with my Blade 18 overall. It's been a great gaming experience and overall user experience in general. I've been really enjoying it. Okay. So we are stock on the GPU. I'm going to make sure the CPU is set correctly still. It should still be set correctly, but we did change our Synapse mode. Okay. All right, so here we are. Let's take a look at our baselines here. If you recall, before we were running at 74 degrees on the GPU and 65 degrees on the CPU. So our CPU temp is about the same, but our GPU temp has dropped by about 10 degrees so far. And that's because of max fans being turned on and we have a laptop cooler. Now, as we continue to run this, we'll see if it can maintain this temps or not. We'll find out. Okay. So GPU undervolting overclocking. Let's go. All right. So basic GPU overclock. First, let's talk about how to read your GPU. Okay. So right now it's showing that we're hitting 0.925 voltage. You can see it right here. All right. This is turned on in the HW info for the GPU core voltage. We're at 2265. And if you look here on the line here, we've got MSI Afterburner here. I can press tab to move between these, okay? So tab goes that way, shift tab brings me back the other way. All right, but you can see at 9.925, the target clock speed actually says 2280 here. Interesting. So 2280 is the target clock speed, but we're hitting that 9.925 voltage node all the time. This is like, these are the GPU clocks. These are the GPU wattages along the bottom here. Or sorry, voltages. Yeah, cool. So essentially, if we want to go for maximum performance, what we want is for the GPU to stay on this voltage node, and we want our clock speed on this voltage node to go up. So to do that, we're going to press the up arrow. All right. Every time we press the up arrow, it goes up 1 clock speed. And if we press control, it'll jump up in batches of 10, which makes it much easier. Okay. So if we wanted to just raise our clock speed by 200, that's all we got to do. All right. We just got to click that node and raise it up. And then in Afterburner here, we just click the little check button right here, okay? So we just click this little check button, and notice it adjusts our curve to hit that, all right? And we are now overclocked. All right, so let's take a look at that. So right now it's doing 2460 at 0.925. And it says we're being power limited and voltage limited. So we're hitting consistently that high GPU clock and that high voltage. All right. So this is excellent. This is just what we're looking for our initial overclock. Now, let's say we add, so notice that our clock speed 2460, okay? That's pretty much exactly 200 more than what we were getting before. So instead, let's just try adding a 200 megahertz overclock to the curve editor. So that just raises our curve by 200. So if we do 0, that's what it looks like. We add 200 to it, it'll raise it up. 200, I'm just gonna type it in. All right, I'm gonna click the apply button. All right, so now this is another way that you can overclock your system, and it's a little easier than having to learn the voltage curve editor. All right, that's the nice thing about it. But the thing is, if you do just this, you're not going to be able to ever undervolt your system because you're not going to be locking your voltage to a lower voltage node. That's the thing. So that's the primary difference. And in addition, we can also ask the inside of here, we can press Control L to try to lock. See that vertical yellow line? We can lock the voltage to a specific node to where we tell the VBIOS to try to target this node. So it doesn't step down in voltage. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit more of an overclock using this curve editor here. All right, so I just stepped us up to plus 240 basically. And now look at our GPU. We're at 2505, which is 240 more than base. All right, that's phenomenal. We're hitting consistently the same voltage without having to step down. That's one of the things. Like if you add too high of a curve, it's just going to cause either your system to crash or the laptop's going to step down in voltage to a lower voltage node, depending on how everything is set up and how it's programmed. So overall, this is really phenomenal. Great potential improvement to performance already here with this overclock. Now let's talk if you wanted to. Basically, this is pretty close to pushing it to maximum. All right. If you wanted to try to push this to maximum, we could try to do that until we crash. Let's try going up 10 at a time. Now that we're close to the peak. Okay. So, you know, and the VBIOS may have a max GPU clock that it could target as well. So 2505 may be the highest it's going to go. Because right now we're telling it to target 2520 right now. Okay, so now I just updated it, and now it is targeting 2520. So that's good. Things seem to be stable still here at 2520. At least for the like 10 seconds that it's been running. The other thing that I'm looking for in the background here, the first thing that usually happens is GPU artifacting when an instability occurs. So really that's what I'm looking for while I'm doing this overclock. So looking for things that aren't rendering correctly, like green, purple blips of information from the GPU throwing errors. All right, so let's try going up to 2540. Let's actually go 2530, yeah. 25, it says 2535. It didn't go to 2530, it went to 2535. It appears to be running just fine still. This is nice. Our voltage is staying nice and steady. Using that Control L on that node, helping us stay steady on that node. Keeping us hopefully in higher performance territory. Notice that we are pulling a little bit higher wattage. I feel like we were not pulling over 100 consistently before. And well, now we're only doing 98. I don't know. Maybe it is no difference to the node. Oh, so look, we've dropped our voltage down to 0.915 for a moment there, and our clock speed did drop. So typically, like, and that may have been just because we're loading between the different scenes there, because it was like right in between the scenes. That's probably why it dropped. But right now, it just seems to be hanging steady at 0.925. Let's try adding another 10. That was actually another 15. So now we're at 2550. Whew. I think this might have some really good silicon in this RTX 4050 because this is a monster overclock right now. I kind of want to run this until we crash. All right, I want to see how high we can go. All right, so we'll add another 10. This is a plus 300 overclock on this RTX 4050. And there it is. There's our crash. Wow. So 2565 is when we crashed. So we probably want to pull back a solid 2550 megahertz from our crash point if we want to have stability in the vast majority of our games. All right. So now that we've crashed, I'll zoom out here. What that does is it just causes the NVIDIA driver to crash. Whatever application you're using throws an error and it crashes usually. And then the driver resets and you'll be at a new lower GPU overclock, usually. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and lower our overclock by 20. All right. We're going to ride the Razer's edge on our OC today. 200 plus 280 OC is a monster overclock. And we're going to do 500 on our memory core. All right. Our memory clock speed. All right. Let's go ahead and give TimeSpy a whirl and see if we can make it all the way through a TimeSpy run and see what our performance levels are. All right. Obviously, I would love to break 12,000 because we were at 11,874 for our base. TimeSpy GPU score. We're also going to be looking at our CPU score and comparing that to what we had before as well. So hopefully we'll see gains in both the GPU and the CPU. So 2535. Awesome sauce. That is phenomenal clock speed increase. So far, we're staying nice and steady. Also, our GPU temp is quite juicy. Like we were in the 70s without the laptop cooler and without max fans previously. Overall, I gotta say that balance mode did do a good job delivering nearly all the GPU performance that you would hope for. But like the max fan mode, obviously decreasing our temps, and then the overclock massively increasing our GPU clock speed. So putting those two things together, and then hopefully also our CPU should be running at a slightly higher clock speed as well. Maybe that'll slightly boost our performance. You know, obviously the GPU is the primary focus here because we are GPU bound at 100% GPU utilization. So CPU performance really doesn't affect these GPU tests. The CPU performance mainly is just going to affect the CPU test for TimeSpy, which is the third test. Again, so far we are being rock solid steady 2535 on our GPU clock, which is phenomenal. Like it's great to see. Everything appears to be stable with no artifacts or glitching so far. We'll see if we run into any as we continue our tests, because we are going to test our games today and compare split screen side by side. The old performance versus the new performance. Time for the CPU test now. And If you do make it through TimeSpy successfully with no crashing or artifacts or glitching of any kind, this is when I would go into Afterburner and save a preset. So to save the preset, you click this save button here, and then you press 1. So preset 1 is going to be our high performance preset. Wow. We got 12,890, which is over 1,000 points increased for our GPU score. And if we compare, our combined score was over 1,000, 1,051 increase for our combined score. Our CPU score went from 10,800 to 12,033 with the Undervolt. Wow. So that Undervolt really boosts our CPU TimeSpy score and our GPU TimeSpy score, and our combined score. So that is truly epic. And one of the very best RTX 4070 scores out there. We got legendary for our hardware. So that's good. We're very optimized. Let's move into some actual gameplay testing. And let's chat. If you have any questions? Our goal is to go over all these things. I guess, you know, we haven't done undervolting the 4070 for best thermals. So I guess we should go ahead and do that real quick as well. Which is going to basically be the goal of undervolting a system is to make it run at a high clock speed. We're going to go for probably the baseline 2265 GPU core clock, but at a lower voltage. So we're going to slide down the voltage curve and, I don't know, knock off hopefully 0.1 volts or 100 millivolts and see if we can still hit our baseline GPU boost and see what we can get. Have I tried the Lenovo Lock notebook yet? No, I have not. That is one of the ones I'm planning to order very soon, so I can do it in August. Okay, so let's say you want to do an undervolt. All right, so we're going to go to the curve editor here. We're going to reset. This is the button to reset. We already know what our voltage goals are. We want to be at 0.925. All right. And then we're going to step down from there. Okay. We're going to step all the way down to 825. So a whole 100 millivolts. I'm not sure if this is actually going to be stable or not. And then we're going to overclock. We're going to go up to 22. Let's do. Let's do 75 millivolts. All right. That might have been too aggressive of an undervolt. You'd have to test it and find out. But 2260. All right. I'm going to press Control L on that 2260. Now that we've raised it up, this is 850 millivolts. All right, and we're going to go ahead and save our settings here. Click the check mark. That redoes our curve. Now we're going to be locked to that voltage and clock speed. It should be nice and stable. All right. But let's find out if that is the case. It may not be stable. I'm just saying, like, hopefully my goal is for it to be stable. I have not tested this. This is first time testing it live. So here we go. We're going to do TimeSpy in the loop again. We're going to let it loop a couple times and make sure that it is nice and hopefully lower wattage while still delivering a similar level of performance. And this could also be used to reduce your temperatures on a low fan speed or low volume. Okay, so here we are. We're getting 2250, which is almost exactly the level of GPU clock we had as a baseline. I think we had 2260 or 2265. So if we wanted to go back into the curve here and raise this up a little bit higher, there we go. 2265. This is the original performance of the system. All right, but look at our wattage now. Only 87 watts, 86 watts. It's only 60 degrees, 59 degrees now on that GPU. Like, if you're okay with the level of performance you get out of the box with the Blade 14, then this is what I would recommend doing, probably undervolting that GPU so the voltage stays low, our temps stay low, fans can run quieter if you want, and the system overall runs really, really well. 2265. Only 80 watts. Everything seems stable and good to go. So this is excellent. So if you run this and it all looks good, you know, you could still apply a GPU memory overclock. So I'll add a plus 200. But this is our undervolt right here. This is our undervolt curve, our efficiency curve. I'm gonna click save and I'm gonna press 2. So now if I ever want to apply my max performance overclock, I can press 1. If I want my most efficient overclock, I can press 2. Shabam. All right. And in our settings in here, I believe it's going to use so you can click start with Windows and start minimized. All right, and then what that would do is it would apply whatever your last GPU overclock is. I think that you were using last time when you boot into Windows, or it'll use number 1. I'm not sure. I haven't tested it. I can't remember off the top of my head, basically. So yeah. So number 2 is our efficiency. Number 1 is our performance. And we'll press number 1 and hit save. That gives us max performance. We're ready to move into our gameplay testing. Let's get into Apex Legends, and we're going to try to go through hopefully like around the same number of games and just see them side by side. So I'm going to go ahead and get that little thing window here ready to go. So this is where the rubber meets the road, and hopefully we get the same level of performance. Interesting. Right. So we need to modify this text real quick. So, Blade 14. Default. Synapse only. Max fans plus boost. High settings. All right, and then this one's gonna be Blade 14. CPU minus 23 undervolt, GPU. We're basically, how much of an overclock are we doing? It's plus 280. I'm gonna pull it down a little bit. I think Apex Legends actually just crashed, so we're gonna do plus 260. It's plus 260. 0.925 voltage. And then it's going to be plus plus 500 on the memory. All right, so that's what our numbers are. And if we have to adjust our voltage or our overclock numbers down because we run into any instability, that's okay. It's to be expected, and we'll adjust on the fly if we need to. So right now, Apex Legends not responding. Let's go ahead and close that with Task Manager. Control-Alt-Delete to bring that up, and then end task. Ghost says Undervolt really helps with temps. Actually, undervolting really helps with GPU temps. Absolutely, undervolting the GPU is a huge drop to GPU temps and wattage. We also have a laptop cooler, so some of the temperature drop is also from having a laptop cooler being added to the mix. All right, so 2535 right now for our clock. Still 0.925. So plus 260 for our GPU overclock. I don't think all RTX 4070s are going to be able to overclock this high for sure. Probably more like plus 200 will be the average for most people. All right, so beautiful, beautiful. All right, we're gonna go into our settings. We're gonna do a video. We're gonna test it the same way. In the firing range, it's gonna be our best way to compare performance. So this is the firing range performance here. Let me get it to a good point where we can kind of look and see our kind of averages. So zooming in and aiming, standing in the middle and zooming in and aiming, we're getting 128. All right, so let's go ahead and run. I'm already seeing 8 degrees cooler on the GPU. All right, so there's our difference. 12 FPS increase with an overclock. 12, 13 FPS increase with an overclock. Let me go ahead and let this play, and I will shoot in this one as well. So look at those GPU temps, look at those CPU temps. How are we doing? All right, laptop cooler, undervolt, overclock. Let's see what's going on here, okay? So right now we're averaging 140. Our 1% low is also 3 FPS higher. Our GPU temperature is, go back. All right, so our GPU temperature 67 versus 71. Our CPU temperature 88 versus 74. Our CPU clock speed right now bouncing between 4.5 and 5 gigahertz. So not only is our CPU at a better temp, but it's also at a higher core clock. Very interesting. Yeah, it's clearly higher performance in the range of 7 to 12 FPS more. It's hard to get an exact average. But yeah, that's some nice performance gains. All right. Excellent. Let's move on to the next game. It's going to be Warzone 2. Which is a very CPU-focused game. So this one's going to be very interesting because it may not have the same level of performance increases that the other one did. It might have, you know, if it has a performance increase, it's probably going to become coming from that CPU undervolt overclock with the curve optimizer. So once we get in the air, I will be airborne and I'll let it play. But for right now, we need to let our shader optimizer do its work. What did you guys think so far of that that overclock undervolt performance gain in Apex Legends? Like, it was pretty clear, in my opinion, it's pretty clear that there was a nice performance gain. Interesting. So, okay. For a second there, I wasn't sure if it crashed. It was kind of stuck on the menu. All right. So, we are waiting for our shaders to optimize. It's at 2%. It'll go up pretty quickly. While we're sitting here waiting for this to happen, it'll probably just, it usually takes like, I don't know, a minute or two for the shaders to optimize. But we'll let that finish and then we'll get into it. So let's take a look at our, so this is our historic Warzone 2 footage. All right. So this is from my Blade 14 unboxing review, and this was what the map, this is the map that was available at the time. I'm not sure if we'll be able to go to the same map or not, but you can see that we're doing 4.2 gigahertz on that CPU, 4.4 right now. We're pulling 31 watts. We're at 63 degrees, so pretty good temps and pretty good CPU performance. Our GPU is at only 58 watts, 58 degrees Celsius, 73% utilization. So not really utilizing that CPU to the maximum. So basically, we've averaged so far 106 FPS in Warzone 2. The problem with Warzone 2 is it's going through a lot of optimization and changes right now. But we'll do our best. For some reason, shaders seem to be stuck at 2%. It's... Yeah, Warzone 2, like they like put it on. Oh, well, maybe the shaders were done because I did run them earlier today. Maybe they realized it was done. I don't know. It's the optimization is not happening. And I'm not sure why. All right, well, I let it go for like 5 minutes and it didn't make any progress, so we're just gonna go ahead and go for it. I wonder if you have to re-optimize them every time you open Warzone, because I did optimize it right before the live stream. I mean, realistically, I could do a test this live stream with this laptop. Set, change UxTU back to 0, reset our overclock to nothing, and run it twice back to back and see in the same area, see if there's any improvement to the performance. We'll see. Deluge says, which laptop would have better temps? Strix G16 with i5-13450HX, RTX 4070, or Acer Predator Neo 16 with i5-13500HX and RTX 4060. Well, both of those should be in the same ballpark of temps. Both of them have overkill cooling for those level of components. So as long as they both have good, CPU, GPU pace jobs, both of those systems should be excellent. If I was picking between those two, I'd probably go Strix G16, probably, but depends on the display of the specific model that you're talking about. So we'll see. I don't know. Okay, so let's find out. Are we going to be in the same area or not, or whatever, what have you? Well, this looks chaotic. Wow, 120 FPS. We were doing 104 previously. Obviously not the exact same area of the match. But this is a massive improvement. Obviously the game is changing a lot constantly. So take this test with a grain of salt here, but wow, that is very impressive. Okay, so here we are. We're gonna try to go to the same rough area if we can. Did the game lock up? Looks like the game may have locked up. So, this is the downside of doing undervolting and overclocking. You might run into some crashes, and you have to turn some stuff down. Yeah, the GPU, it appears the GPU overclock probably caused it to crash. So we're going to go in here and we're going to drop it down another 15. All right, let's do 20. All right. So every time we come and encounter a crash, we're going to lower our overclock by another like 15 to 20, maybe 25. I'm probably going to do 20 each time. But so I just lowered the overclock down to Plus 235 right now. All right, plus 235. So beautiful three-way. This is gonna change. We change this. Okay, so we can rejoin the match. All right, so we're rejoining the match. Maybe it'll let us rejoin and hop back in. We're probably just standing there at the end of where the plane drops people off. Okay, yeah, we're dead. So we're gonna continue on. I gotta update the information here. Plus 235. So lowered our GPU overclock a little bit. Deluxe. The big thing there, they might both be 1920 by 1200, 165 hertz, but one of those screens might have better color gamut or brightness. The Neo 16 that I tested had a higher brightness screen, 400 nits brightness, whereas the Strix G16 I think was 300 or 325 or something. So if you're after a better, brighter screen, I think the Neo 16 is probably the way to go, if the prices are the same. Oh, but the Asus is $200 cheaper. Okay, well then probably go with the Asus then. That would make sense. All right. Okay, well, I'm excited. Let's see if we can not crash this time. This is the joy of tweaking a laptop, and I do enjoy it. Like it's actually fun trying to figure out what the best, most optimal settings are for each machine. Is pretty cool feeling, I think. Okay. All right, so notice our GPU clock speed is not as high as it was. This guy trying to melee me. Notice our CPU clock is quite a bit higher. 4.9 gigahertz on that CPU clock, which is pretty massive increase. Okay, here we are. Let's go ahead and see if we don't crash this time. All right, so we're gonna go for landing in the same area, if we can. Beautiful. Okay. Whoa. We're being shot already. Oh my goodness. Okay, 116 FPS versus before we were doing 107, 105. You know, now we're watching, we were expecting that other person. Looking at our CPU clock speeds, we were definitely doing more, a higher clock speed level. Oh snap. Are these prisoner guardsmen? What is this? Is just to have people to fight? Attack the guards to get out of the gulag? Wait, what? This is different. What is this? This is new. Oh my, okay. Well. What? I was on the flag. Okay, well, 115 FPS in the gulag. We were doing 108 FPS in the gulag before. All right, there's your Warzone test. It certainly seems like, I don't know, 5 to 10 FPS increase at least. Let's see here. Leave match. Let's move on to the next game. What's our next game for today? Doom Eternal? I think we did CSGO, but let's find out. I need to check. I don't believe we're doing Doom Eternal. Okay. Yeah, CSGO is our next test. I don't know that it'll be much different in CSGO. I guess the CPU undervolt is going to be the main determining factor there. We'll have to see. So CSGO is loading up right now. So obviously CSGO being a very CPU bound game often, but depends on the situation. And you can obviously get really high FPS in CSGO. Let's see, what did we get in our test initially? Let's check. So CSGO, The first time I tested it, 237 basically. So here we go. All right, so same exact settings. Try to get this lined up as exactly as possible here. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at our side-by-sides here now. So we have our originals here on the this is the overclock, this is the unoverclock. I'm not seeing too much of a difference in the FPS counter. It's going to be hard to tell. We'll have to actually see the average. The average FPS will tell us more. 280. Let's see what in the smoke. In the smoke, both going down to the 40s, but I think we saw 47 that's the low versus 41. I don't know. Through this area, very similar levels of FPS again. Going through the smoke again. Very similar levels of 1% lows or very lows there, like in the low 40s. So I'm not sure if there's going to be much of a difference in this game. Looks like it'll be a few FPS more, perhaps. We'll see. Obviously, for a game like CSGO, probably the best thing to do would just be to set the settings to be a little bit lower so you could get higher FPS in typical gameplay. Okay, so let's see what we got if we zoom in. $241. 241 versus 236.8. So we only gained about 5 FPS. That's a pretty minor gain for all of the little steps we've done today. All right, next is God of War. Okay, so this is going to be done on QHD Plus, which is 2560 by 1600. And then we are going to be facing the same direction. Let's verify our settings. DLSS should be on quality. Graphics are set to ultra. Beautiful. All right, let me go ahead and wait until this is about to go. There we go. All right, so here we go. $68 versus 64 FPS wise. Our 1% lows are also higher. see what happens when we get to the end here. So 65 FPS versus 70 FPS, and we also had a 7 FPS gain in our 1% lows, which is quite nice. Oh, we're zoomed in. We got to redo that. Okay, so hold on. So sorry about that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and back that up and rerun that test. It'll only take a moment. Okay, so let's run that back. We gained about 5 FPS during that initial test, but let's go ahead and run this back and see. All right. So again, about a 5 FPS gain so far on average from this overclock undervolt. So 65 versus 71. You know, it's interesting. Our CPU temp and wattage is higher this time. 31 watts versus 45 watts. Our clock speed on the CPU is also higher at 4.8 to 5 gigahertz. So we're getting, now it's 2. I don't know, it's interesting. This keeps jumping around. Our GPU temp is about the same. Our wattage is higher though. Interesting. So, very nice. Overall levels of performance. Nice performance gain, both in the 1% low as well as the overall FPS going up 6. So about a 9% FPS gain overall, with like a 20% gain to our 1% lows, at least during this test. So very nice. Let's go ahead and roll it back. Go into Cyberpunk 2077. Phi asks, is DLSS too important to turn off for a 4070 laptop? That's a great question. So I keep it on because I believe in testing the laptop the way that gamers are going to actually play the games. And that's why I always test with all my settings set to what I believe the gamers would actually play the game at, if there was like a hardcore gamer who knows what settings to set. So that's why I set those settings to what they are. And so I always turn on DLSS to quality, which I think most laptop gamers are going to set it to quality to get more FPS, better bang for the buck. Usually it improves FPS with very minor visual loss. But certain games, obviously DLSS doesn't quite look as good. But I still think the vast majority of games people are going to run with DLSS enabled, and in the frame generation games, they're going to run it with frame generation enabled. So, yeah. Okay, so loading into Cyberpunk 2077. Video full screen 2560 by 1600. Ray tracing set to ultra. Frame generation is enabled. DLSS is set to quality. Okay, that's our settings. This is the settings I think most people would probably play this game at. Let's go ahead and get this ready for the split here. All right. Cool. So we are loading into the benchmark right now. We are ready to go, I believe. Beautiful. Things are looking quite similar. Whoa. Interesting. I think we are seeing higher levels of performance on the old settings. Which leads me to go, why? I'm seeing higher CPU clock speed or not. We should have higher clock speed on this one, on the new version, but we're not. Interesting. Let's make sure that our settings are set to the correct settings. We are hitting high GPU utilization, at least out here. Huh. Weird. Okay. Yeah, we got 73.5 with our old original settings. This is showing RTX 4070. Same game version. Ray tracing, yes. Ultra, no. DLSS enabled, yes. Oh, DLSS quality was set to auto. Oh, that's why. Okay, so that test is invalid. We have to leave it on auto if we want to try to test it exactly the same. It should have been set to quality. DLSS should have been set to quality. But Cyberpunk 2077 has this problem where you set it to quality, it doesn't really take that setting. And then, yeah. So most likely, it should run it, at least in theory, at the same exact... I hate running anything in auto, but it's the same game version and very similar drivers and everything. So in theory, it should be very similar performance. Let's try it again. We're going to try it this time with everything being hopefully the same. Whoa. Our frame time graph is not looking nearly as consistent. What an interesting... Our GPU wattage is also dropping much lower, 83. It's showing high GPU boost clocks, but our actual performance appears to be regressing right now. Super interesting. Makes me wonder if the GPU driver may have crashed or something, but you can see our according to this, we're getting the correct voltage and the correct GPU boost clock, but our power is way lower. Our power utilization is much lower than even the stock settings, so something is going on here. Our CPU is pulling higher levels of wattage. I believe all the settings were the same this time, but the thing is, DLSS was set to auto, so maybe it didn't even do the same level of DLSS. Maybe it just ran on quality mode again. This is why you can't let auto settings happen. But we had worse 1% low stutters too. I don't know, chat. That was a weird one. That was a weird result for sure. Very interesting. So let's see if we change the settings at all in the original. I almost view both of those as being like invalid tests in a way. Just because auto setting is not going to reliably keep us on the same DLSS setting. So, and then in addition, we're seeing some really weird GPU performance numbers. that make me go, we needed to retest and figure out what's going on in this. Let's try it. Let's just move on to another game, because if the test was not the correct one, then that's no good. If the settings were not correct. All right. Let's move on to Hogwarts Legacy. So Hogwarts Legacy being one of the latest AAA titles that I've played through Hogwarts. Out of all these games, I have played almost all of these games a lot. I beat God of War, Hogwarts, on all these games over here. I've played Apex Legends and Warzone quite a bit. I've not beat Doom Eternal. God of War, I beat that. Cyberpunk beat that. Hogwarts beat that. Dead Space have not. Last of Us, I'm like halfway. Dying Light 2, I'm like 20% of the way through. Have not played Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and right now I'm in The Witcher 3, right in the middle of that, playing that. I love that game. All these games are really great. So, I don't know. We'll have to see if the performance level actually increases in Hogwarts. I'm curious because Hogwarts in Hogsmeade, very CPU-bound area, very memory sensitive, potentially VRAM limited, so we're going to run textures on low. Frame generation enabled, ray tracing enabled for our first test. And once we make sure that all of those settings are set, we will move into the test. Oh, look at this. Look at this. We have another crash, which means that we probably have our GPU overclocked too much still. Wait. Oh, maybe it didn't crash. Okay, never mind. I don't know, it was just taking a while to load, but it was thinking, and now it's good. Hogwarts can take a long time to load sometimes. How about Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020? It's not installed. I'm sorry. It sucks because I would love to test Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I download the files installed on the SSD, but you go to run it when you go to a new laptop, it has to reinstall and do everything all over again every time. Okay, so here's our settings: ultra settings, low textures, ray tracing on ray tracing enabled, DLSS on quality, frame generation on, uncapped frame rate. Okay. So split screen Hogwarts action. Let's check it out. So running up here, let's go ahead and, I mean, it looks like maybe a little bit higher FPS. It's hard to tell so far. Things are jumping around a lot. Frame time graph is looking pretty similar to what it was before. The one thing I will say, using UxTU, we seem to be hitting 45 watts to that CPU a lot more often, which is interesting. Okay, so here we are. We are ready to go. Just looking at some stats here real quick. 2490 on the GPU boost clock, 2265 on the stock. 81 watts of power, 75 originally. So that overclock demanding a little more juice, it seems like. The CPU also taking more juice at 42, 43, 45 watts here. And that also leads to a higher temperature despite being on a laptop cooler. So not sure if it'll actually translate into more performance in this game. Let's find out. All right, so far averaging 5 more FPS, 6 more FPS. Very interesting. Nice. We're getting some nice performance gains here in Hogwarts. So 60, 6131, 6635. So we got 5 FPS gain on our average, 4 FPS gain on our 1% lows. And that's certainly a notice. That's going to be a, I don't know about noticeable, but that's a measurable improvement for sure. So that's good. We saw we have discovered another game in which we're getting noticeably more performance. Excellent. Okay, let's see here. Next up, we have Dead Space. The laptop cooling pad is bananas. Yes, it is quite loud, and yeah, it's quite extreme. But it does help. I think it does help. It's, you know, the thing that's kind of throwing off all of our temps in this is maybe it's UxTU that raised the power limit, or maybe Synapse did an update, or I don't know what it is, but our wattage pull is higher. It seems to be consistently higher. So that's the interesting thing to me. You know, right now, you can see it's pulling 65 watts loading in on the original. And on the new one, it's doing 72 watts. So even just loading into the game, we're pulling 6 more watts now after using UxTU. Which is, you know, again, very an interesting observation. And that is going to affect, obviously, our clock speed and CPU performance, but also our temperatures especially. So I would not be surprised if we had increased temps in Dead Space again. But hopefully we'll also have increased performance too, right? So let's see. So we want Ultra preset with DLSS on quality. Still building them shaders. Hey, all right. We're going to verify our settings, that they're still correct. $2560 by 1600. DLSS on quality, graphics on ultra. Continue. Okay. Where are we at? Now we're doing 7 more FPS for both the average and the 1% low. Pretty interesting. 6 more FPS for our average, 5 more for our 1% low. That's quite nice. Yeah, 6 FPS increase. Looking at our CPU wattage, pulling 20 more watts through that CPU. We're hitting 100% GPU utilization. You know, like we're really not seeing, we're hitting 100% GPU utilization in both systems. That's the thing. So really we're just getting an increase to our temperature. Well, not really seeing too much of a performance gain, really. Well, we are seeing a performance gain. We're definitely seeing a performance gain. But still. Yeah, I mean, 7 FPS performance gain. All right, let's go ahead and see what we get when we walk this here in a second. Despite pulling more wattage on the CPU and GPU, the GPU temp is still the same. All right, we're walking now. This is the official benchmark area for Dead Space. Still about 6 more FPS for our average. 1% lows appear to be very similar this time around, but we'll see by the time we get to the end. You know, it's so interesting that that undervolt is like kind of demanding a bit more on that CPU wattage. Not expected. I was not expecting that. It's kind of not really helping us much and increasing our temperature by a lot. I mean, we are getting more performance, but that's because of the GPU overclock, I think. 82 FPS, 76 for our 1%, or 76 for our stock. Our overclock gave us 6 FPS increase. That's going to be what, like a 7% gain overall in Dead Space. I mean, it's a nice gain. But the interesting thing to me is that CPU boost clock, or the CPU boost. We're going to go to Last of Us next. You know, the CPU power limit increase just is not, I don't know. I don't know if it's the UxTU causing that CPU power increase, like I said, or if it's the Synapse when maybe went through an update that allows the power limit to go higher under a dual load. I'm not sure, but we're not really, I don't think we're seeing any performance gains from that increased wattage because we're being GPU bound in both scenarios. That's what I'm trying to say here. Being GPU bound in both scenarios just means that, you know, there's not really much performance gains to be had, and it's just causing increased temps. And if we were not using a thermal cooling pad right now, we would be, for sure, I think, you know, thermal throttling, basically. Okay, so here we are, Last of Us. Let's go ahead. It says shaders are building. I believe it's probably because we updated the driver. I suppose I should double check our settings that they're all the same. We should have medium textures, everything on ultra, DLSS on quality. Let me just get everything set to the right place. All right, there we go. So the one caveat about this test is that the stock over here with Max Fans, this has the shaders pre-rendered. This one over here does not have the shaders pre-rendered, so this might give us a good idea of, does the shaders really matter or not, or not, you know? Because it really, like, they really may not matter that much. I think having the shaders pre-rendered definitely might help loading between different map zones, or potentially when you are loading into a new, like a brand new area of the map. Like right now we're basically loading the house area of the map in Last of Us. And I noticed that the load time is probably like twice as long loading in. But this will be very interesting to see what the FPS is like when you're actually in the game, and see if there's any differences there. Okay, almost done loading now. Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to go into our options to make sure our graphics are set. Everything should still be set the same. DLSS quality, correct. And graphics should be on ultra. Everything's on ultra except for textures on medium. That's correct. All right, so here we go. I really want these to be lined up exactly if I can. At least very, very close. There we go. Okay. All right, so looking at our FPS performance right now, we're getting 83 FPS on the overclock, 79 on average with the non-overclock. So about a 4 FPS gain. We're also getting a 4 FPS increase to our 1% lows, which is also very nice. So that's going to be about a 5% overall increase in Last of Us. So a little bit smaller gain than average, than what we have seen in some of the other games out there, but it's still very good. Looking at our temps, 66 degrees on the CPU. Again, about 20 more watts going through the CPU on the overclock version, which is giving our CPU a boost, I think, to 5 gigahertz instead of 4.7. And again, that must be UxTU doing that. And we are GPU bound anyway. So again, using UxTU inside of gaming scenarios may just abnormally raise your temps. So very interesting. Okay, so I'm pretty sure the performance levels that we're seeing right now is going to be consistent going back and forth. Let's go ahead and exit Last of Us and move on to the next game. Dying Light 2 is our next game. Very interesting zombie survival game. Okay, so high quality ray tracing. DLSS on quality, frame generation enabled. Let's go ahead and get into the benchmark now. Okay, so initial FPS 77 on stock settings, 84 right now on the overclock. So about a 7 FPS gain, getting closer to 10% performance improvements in this game, Dying Light 2. Very nice. Again, taking a look, let's take a look at our wattages. 2490 on our GPU boost clock, 100 watts of utilization, 0.925 volts being pushed consistently, probably on both, but just it takes more juice to run at that higher clock speed. So our CPU wattage is also 10 watts higher, though our temperature is not that much different. Again, that's because of the cooler that we have aiding in our cooling process. Definitely seeing higher CPU clock speeds with the undervolted overclock CPU with the higher wattage too. Pretty consistently seeing like more clock speed and more wattage being pulled. But we are, again, GPU bound with 100% GPU utilization. So theoretically, the CPU increased performance should not affect things very much in this GPU bound game. So 80 FPS versus 89 FPS, that actually brings us up to like a 12% performance gain here in Dying Light 2. You can see our average is 79 for our median, 88 for our median on the overclock. So that's a 9 FPS gain exactly. And at 79 FPS, a 9 is like, yeah, like a 12% performance gain. Very nice. That is very, very nice. Love to see it. Okay. We have 2 more games. We have Shadow of the Tomb Raider and The Witcher 3. So all of these settings should still be correct. They all look correct. It's on highest settings with ray tracing on ultra, DLSS on quality. Okay, so we'll go ahead and run the benchmark. There we go. And this one's going to be interesting to see. We won't be able to get official total graphics benchmarks numbers until it's actually done with the whole test, and they give us the official number at the end. But I will be starting the benchmark average here at the start, and that'll give us at least a ballpark FPS number increase. It should give us close to our increase at least. Okay, so looking at our performance, our 1% low performance, pretty similar, but about 5 FPS higher for our 1% lows. 92 average here versus 86. So far, about 5 to 6 FPS increase, which is about a 7 to 8% performance gain in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, at least in this initial test here. Again, our CPU clock hitting higher FPS. I bet you our CPU clock hitting higher is boosting our 1% lows. And then our GPU clock being higher is boosting our average FPS to be a little bit higher. Now, our 1% lows just got messed up because we switched loading scenes from one scene to the other scene. So we can't really look at those anymore. Again, seeing more wattage on the CPU and the GPU now. $84 versus $76 for our overall average. I'm still looking at this number, still a pretty legit number, to give us a pretty good correlation of how much FPS gains we might see. You could also look at the current. If we're at the exact same scene, you can look at the current FPS Like right now, we're doing about 10 more FPS in this scene, comparatively speaking. Interesting. So, again, about 20 more watts of power going through that CPU, just really slamming that CPU, but the CPU temps are still in a reasonable range, and that is, I believe, going to be helping our 1% lows quite noticeably. Overall average now, 7 FPS higher, 6 FPS higher for our overall average. So about 6 to 7% performance gain overall right now. Nearing the end of the benchmark. I can't check chat while we're doing these side by side, so that's why I was alt-tabbing real quick. Okay, so we're about to find out our actual official number here. 89 FPS. Let me go ahead and slide this over. 89 FPS versus 95 FPS. So 95 here and 89 here. So that's a 6 FPS gain on a total of 89 FPS. Yeah, it's going to be like a 7.5, 7-ish% performance gain in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Let's move on to The Witcher 3, our last game, and then we'll summarize everything for today. And chat, if you have any other questions about this whole optimization process, please let me know. I did go over everything in detail at the beginning on how to do this, all the little steps to making it happen. Okay, so ray tracing on Ultra, DLSS to quality. Frame generation enabled full screen 2560 by 1600. Beautiful. So let's see if we're going to be a GPU or CPU bound game at this resolution. I believe we're going to be GPU bound at QHD with ray tracing on and frame generation enabled. Okay, so let's go ahead and get prepped to go to the right area, the benchmark here. Yeah, we are GPU bound. All right, definitely hitting higher FPS, like 7 FPS higher right now, actually. Pretty noticeable gain. Our 1% low is also, again, higher, 6 FPS higher. Wow, nice. So 7156. So A 6 FPS gain. Waiting for the game. Okay, so there. Oh, well, I keep moving the camera here. Okay, there we go. So 64 FPS. Stock, 64 FPS. Overclock, 70. That's a 6 FPS gain. That's going to be about a 9% improvement overall. Again, a 6 FPS gain on our 1% lows, which are arguably more important. And that's like an 11% gain in our FPS on our 1% lows. So not bad at all. Like that's actually pretty dang, that's pretty dang good for a overclock. Okay. So, chat, what did we find out today about the Blade 14? Let's go ahead and turn off those. Wow, I bet it's so much quieter now. Okay, so that's the laptop cooling fan, and now the laptop fans themselves are going to go to quiet. So summarizing everything we found out about this Blade 14 optimization. Okay, so Cinebench R23, 24% performance gain by doing everything from like straight balanced mode to undervolted and all the settings on the Synapse set correctly. If you were doing just a basic, just a small tweak, you're still going to see noticeable gains just changing Synapse settings, going from 17,000 to 18,000 in Cinebench R23 with undervolting enabled is a noticeable increase. It's a nice increase, actually. But it's not the kind of thing that's like necessarily mind-blowing, but still very impressive in my opinion. Time Spy score, I think, was very impressive. Stock score was 11,874. With the overclock, we went over 1,000 points more at 12,900 something. So the almost breaking 13,000 in a 14-inch chassis is just awesome to see. And I think the biggest downside to the undervolting that we did, right, the undervolting overclocking we did in the games, is we did see a couple crashes. So we had to lower our GPU overclock twice, from 265 then down to like 245 to then 235 was our final GPU overclock. And you know, we were going for max performance today. We weren't necessarily going for max temps. If we were going for maximum temps, obviously we could not have our power limit increased to 45, 50 or whatever in the games. Keeping it at that 30 mark gives us the vast majority of performance with the Ryzen 9 7940HS. So that's one thing I would do differently if I was trying to optimize for best temperatures while still getting the vast majority of performance. And I'm not sure exactly which setting was messing that up. Then the second thing is if I was just going to try to go for best temps, you know, then you're talking about undervolting that GPU and not trying to ramp to max clock speeds, right? We would try to drop down to like 875 millivolts instead of 925, and then trying to hit that 2265 base clock for the GPU to get us back to the base level of performance. And that would give us our best overall temps without losing any performance. You can even go lower with your boost clock, as well as lowering your undervolt to a lower level, and maybe you know, down to 2000 or 2100 if you really want low temps, or you really want almost no fan noise. You want extremely quiet fan noise. Then you can get the GPU down to like only 65, 75 watts of power under full load, and you're going to be like getting 90% of the performance that you normally would get, but at much, much quieter fan speeds and lower temps. So, and I showed you how to do that earlier in the live stream during this section It was only for a brief moment though. Yeah, so overall in the games, we were seeing usually probably on average around 8% performance gains with this GPU and CPU undervolting overclocking. And I mean, really with the GPU, we were mainly just seeing overclocking, right? That's pretty much all we did for the GPU today. We just overclocked it in all of the tests, except for the time when we were doing for best thermals. And we saw that performance gain, you know, like instead of spending thousands of dollars more on a more expensive GPU, you could theoretically overclock the GPU you have to give you that extra performance gain, which in certain titles, it's going to be more noticeable than others. But in general, a nice 7-8% performance gain on your FPS is nice. Like otherwise, you know, we're getting, the main reason we were getting slightly higher temps was because of that CPU wattage increase. And of course, the other big thing we had today was our increase to our 1% lows. Honestly, the 1% low increase was pretty consistently about the same as the average, but because 1% lows are more important, if you have a 10% increase to 1% lows, that's going to be, I think, be more noticeable than a 10% increase to average FPS. So, yeah. Anyway, Johnny Davidson says, keep up the good work. Your live streams are great. Glad to be as helpful as I can. Hopefully this was helpful for you to see how much performance gain you can get with an overclock. Basically, anywhere from 7 to 12%, depending on the game specifically. And overall, I think that that overclocking your GPU is still worth it, especially if you're keeping it at the same exact voltage level, but just increasing the GPU boost clock. And as long as you're not pushing it so far that you're running into any instability. Like once we crashed a couple times here in Apex Legends and then again in Warzone, we did not crash again. We had consistent, no problems for the rest of the games. And that's pretty much what you're going to run into once you've dialed in and tested a bunch of different games at your overclock. So, yeah. Can you try to review some Clevo chassis laptops? I'll have to talk to Clevo to have them send me a review unit because it's harder to resell a Clevo laptop. Okay. Kamada says 4070 save some money or spend the cash for a 4080, 4090. Great question. The Blade 14 does not come with a 4080 or 4090, so you have to switch to a either the G14 or a bigger laptop if you want to go for a 4080 or 4090. And I do think there's a big performance gap between a 4070 and 4080. So depending on the laptop, it may be super worth it going to a 4080 or 4090. If it was my money, I probably would if it was my money going for an ultra portable style laptop, I'd probably go for a 4090 G14. That's what I would go for, just to get the most GPU performance in the smallest chassis possible. Okay. I think that's everything for today's live stream. I think we nailed it today. The only issue I guess we had was in Cyberpunk 2077. Weren't able to test that. Those results really weren't very valid because the original test was not done at a consistent setting. But everything else, we did see performance gains across the board. Yeah. Let me know in the comments if there's any other further questions, but I think this is overall an excellent guide on how to optimize your Blade 14 for the most possible FPS or the best possible temps. Links in the description if you want to check out the Blade 14. Yusef says, hey, thanks, man, for your amazing videos and reviews. Can you please do one about the Acer Predator Triton 17X? It seems like it has it all. Gotcha. Thanks for the suggestion. I have had that laptop suggested a few times now, and I am tempted to check it out. I'll have to see if I can get my hands on one. Thanks so much. I'll see you guys in the next one, hopefully tomorrow. I've got the Acer Nitro 16 with a 4070 as well. I'd be very interested in comparing that performance with the Blade 14, especially since that laptop was on sale for under $1,400, or I think, yeah, $1,350 or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it went on sale. It went on sale, and I did buy it when it was on sale. So I got a good deal on it. Hopefully, it's an excellent machine. All right, see you in the next one.